Alright guys, I'm the NFL Addict, and today I will be making my NFL record predictions for the 2021 Minnesota Vikings. Now, before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe. I'm going to be doing one of these for every single team, then the playoffs, then redoing them so that they're updated, and of course doing the playoffs again. So that way, before the season starts, I've got my updated predictions locked and loaded. Hopefully only a couple of days before the season actually begins, or possibly before preseason. I don't remember how quickly I get them done normally. But the Vikings, let's go ahead and get started about them. Really, they haven't done all that much this offseason. Their biggest moves are signing Xavier Woods and Patrick Peterson. Other than that, they lost Kyle Rudolph, and that's about it. However, that offense is still extremely strong. When you've got Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson as your two wide receivers, or your wide receiver 1 and 2, that is great. Those are two of the best, not the best, but some very, very good wide receivers. I mean, Justin Jefferson, I really thought he should have been Offensive Rookie of the Year last year, and he wasn't, but he wouldn't let me lose some. And also, they have Dalvin Cook, who's probably a top 5 running back in my opinion. I think he's slightly underrated. That defense, though, other than Xavier Woods and Patrick Peterson, which good on them for going out and getting some pieces on the defense. Other than that, really, I don't much care for the rest of their defense. Yet Daniel Hunter and Dalvin Tomlinson maybe on the offensive line, but that linebacker core has no talent whatsoever, and I don't even really care for that defensive line all that much. So they have a pretty good secondary now with Xavier Woods and Patrick Peterson on there, and their offense is going to be really good. Yeah, it'll be pretty good. I'm not going to go there and say it's going to, win the Super Bowl, but they have a pretty solid offense. I definitely like their offense more than their defense, and that was what we saw last year, is that their defense was the problem. Now, another good thing for this team is that towards the end of their season, they started picking things up, and we like to see that in teams. If you start off rough, but then by the end of your season, you're looking like a much, much better team, that is exactly what the Vikings did, and so I think that could carry over into this season. I don't think they're going to be a superstar team, but I definitely think they'll be pretty good, and I think they'll be one of those teams that maybe is lasting until around week 16, 17 is in the hunt, and who knows though? Who knows? Because we still got to go through their whole schedule. All right. The Vikings, starting off in week 1, they have 2 straight away games. Wow. But the week 1 away game is against the Cincinnati Bengals, who went out and got themselves Jamar Chase. And doing that, though, they did lose Penei Sewell. But now you look at this, they've got Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, and now Jamar Chase in the wide receiver unit. That is going to be very hard to stop. And I mean, especially since the Vikings don't have that much of a defensive line, this is going to be a very good game for them because they don't have much of a defensive line, but the Bengals don't have much of an offensive line, and the Vikings have a really good secondary, and the Bengals are going to have a really good passing attack. So I like the matchup for their defense, and I probably like this Minnesota offense over the Cincinnati defense, so I'm going to give Minnesota the win here in week 1, starting off 1-0, so a lot different than last year already. But in week 2, they have an away game against the Arizona Cardinals, and their offense is really, really good. I mean, it is stacked with talent, and the addition of A.J. Green doesn't hurt at all. I don't much care for their defense. It's really J.J. Watt, who's getting old, and who knows how many years he's got left, and Buda Baker. Buda Baker's really the only good, solid, young player they've got on that defense, in my opinion. Other than that, though, their offense is insane, and their defense, I mean, it isn't terrible. They do still have those 2 pieces. So I think this will be a tough game, but in the end, I'm going to have to give it to Arizona. I just like that offense too much, and I don't think Minnesota's defense is good enough to catch up. In week 3, Minnesota has their first home game against the Seattle Seahawks, who are, I mean, so good. That linebacker core is legendary. That offense, obviously, Chris Carson, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, yeah, that's his name, and Russell Wilson. I mean, that offense, it was insane last year. Really, they should have won that game against the Rams in the playoffs. They should have won a couple playoff games at least. They are just, I'm sorry, but the Vikings just aren't up to that point yet. And Minnesota is going to take a loss here in week 3. A rough stretch here. A rough stretch of these 3 games before they start picking things back up. But definitely this is a tough stretch. And in week 4, they have a home game against, in my opinion, a Super Bowl contender in the Cleveland Browns. I mean, their offense is just so good. I mean, Nick Chubb is probably one of the best running backs in the league, and then you've also obviously got Odell Beckham Jr., who had a couple great games last year, but he wasn't as good as he has been, and Jarvis Landry. So the Cleveland Browns have an amazing offense, and they loaded up on the secondary, and I mean that adds to their already great defense. the Cleveland Browns are going to win this one, and Minnesota's going to take their third loss in a row. They're 1-3. Things aren't looking all that great, but in Week 5 they have a home game against Detroit. Detroit, they got Penei Sewell, and that's about it. They got Penei Sewell, and they got rid of Matthew Stafford, and they downgraded with Jared Goff. I would take Matthew Stafford over Jared Goff any day of the week. So I feel like Detroit only got worse. I don't know if they'll split yet, but I know for sure that Minnesota's going to get the win here in Week 5. Though it depends, how I'm feeling when I get to Week 13, if I see if they'll split with Detroit or if Minnesota will get the sweep. In Week 6, they have another away game against the Carolina Panthers, who got Sam Darnold. And Sam Darnold is, I'm not too sure about him, because he's either going to leave the Jets organization and he's going to get a lot better, like a lot of other players we've seen do the same thing, or he's going to leave the Jets, be the same old quarterback, just with a better offense around him. So I think either way, Sam Darnold is going to be better. I don't know if he'll be better than Teddy Bridgewater was last year. I don't think he'll be better than Teddy Bridgewater was at the beginning of the season. There was a 3-game stretch at the beginning of the season where Teddy Bridgewater looked like he was going to be the Panthers' future. Then after that, it was pretty bad. I wouldn't be surprised if Sam Darnold is, a slight upgrade looking at the whole season. So I think this Carolina Panthers offense as a whole probably got a little bit better with the Sam Darnold signing, and also, but it did get a little worse because of the Curtis Samuel release. However, they do still have Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, so this is going to be a close one. It's a rematch from last year where Carolina really, it was a close one last year, and Carolina took a couple steps up on offense. Minnesota took a couple steps up on defense. And I think it's going to be the same result. I think Minnesota is going to get the win here in Week 6 to get back up to .500 before they go into their bye week. They had a 3-game skid there, but they righted the ship, got 2 more wins, and now they have a home game coming off of a bye week against the Dallas Cowboys, who really didn't do all that much, especially to help that offensive line. That offensive line was one of their biggest needs. It was that was probably their biggest need. I know, they had some secondary issues, which is where they focused most of their offseason on. But really, it was all about that offensive line, in my opinion, and they didn't really do all that much. They really only signed Dak Prescott, and that was it. We saw Ezekiel Elliott had a horrendous year last year. He started to pick things up in the last 3 or 4 games. But other than that, he had a terrible year last year, and a lot of that had to do with offensive line play. And also, Dak Prescott, they weren't very good when they had him either. I think they were 1-3 or 1-4 whenever they had Dak Prescott. So I don't like this Dallas team, and I think Minnesota is going to get a win here to get back up into the winning category. All right, 3-game losing streak, 3-game winning streak, but now they've got another 4 really tough games here coming up. In Week 9, they have an away game against the Baltimore Ravens, who are really just not completely revamped, but they got a lot better on that offense with some of the moves they made in the wide receiver room. And I don't know if that Minnesota, I guess the Minnesota secondary, this might be kind of a good matchup for them, but I don't know if I quite like that. I don't know if I like their defense enough to keep Baltimore's explosive offense in check, and Baltimore's going to get the win here in Week 9. In Week 10, they have an away game against the Chargers. The Chargers are a very interesting team. They have such a good team, but also last year they weren't playing that good. A lot of that to do with coaching, but they got a new coaching staff. So I like this Chargers team a lot, and they're going to give Minnesota their 5th loss. So now Minnesota back in the losing category. It's an up and down season thus far, but they're heading in to Week 11, a home game against Green Bay, who I am assuming has Jordan Love in at quarterback. I don't think that they will re-sign Aaron Rodgers. I think they could offer Aaron Rodgers all the money that they have right now, that they can afford to pay somebody, and he would still say no. I don't think Aaron Rodgers wants to be a part of that Green Bay organization at all. So I think Jordan Love will be their starting quarterback. And, because of that, I feel like that this Minnesota secondary will be primed to take advantage of the fact that he's a young quarterback. And I think this is a good matchup for Minnesota. I think that they will split the series, so I'm going to give Minnesota the win here, which may surprise a lot of people, but I'm going to give Green Bay the win in Week 17. In Week 12, they have an away game against the San Francisco 49ers, who I assume will be completely healthy and who is still a bit controversial, but I assume will have Jimmy G in at quarterback. I know a lot of people think that Trey Lance will be in quarterback at this point, but personally, I think that Jimmy G is not as bad as a lot of people think that he will be, or that he has been. I think he's still a really good quarterback. I don't think he's good enough to get benched for a first-year quarterback who really, I feel like, wasn't the best option there. I think they should have taken Justin Fields. I think that the Jets should have taken Justin Fields. That's a whole other video. However, I know I just said that. In Week 12, going up against the 49ers, who have, they have so much talent on offensive that offensive. I was about to say offensive line. That whole offense as a whole is just so good, and that defense is so stout. I'm sorry, but Minnesota is going to fall back again into the losing category at 5-6. I'm going to give Minnesota the sweep here. I just can't see them losing to Detroit. Then they have another tough game, a home game against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has such a good defense. Even without Bud Dupree, they will be so explosive. Didn't like the fact that they took a running back over offensive line in the draft, but that is going to help them out a lot. Having a solid rookie running back there is going to help them out a lot. I'm going to give Pittsburgh the win here. I just don't know if that Minnesota offense, I know I talked a lot of good stuff about it before I really started knowing my predictions. I don't know if it's good enough to get past this stout Pittsburgh defense. Pittsburgh's going to get the win here, and they go up 6-7 in Week 15 in an away game against Chicago. And these two teams are kind of evenly matched, I feel. I assume that Justin Fields will be in at this point. I don't think that Andy Dalton's going to last more than 3 games. If you want more information on that, watch my Bears video. So I think they will be pretty evenly matched. And so, like I always say, if you don't know who to pick on a divisional game, just have them split. So I'm going to have them split here. All right, now they have a rough 2-game stretch here. They're at home against the Rams, who did nothing but get better this season. A complete upgrade at quarterback, like I was talking about with the Lions. I think that I would take Matthew Stafford over Jared Goff any day of the week. And just look, the Rams upgraded quarterback. They got Deshaun Jackson. They completely got that. They ramped up that offense. And LA's going to get the win here. I can't see Minnesota sweeping Green Bay. I can't see it happening. And like I already said, they're going to split with Chicago. So a disappointing into the season, and they end up with a 2-4 into the season. They drop down to 7-10, which is pretty rough. But now we get to go through worst case scenario and the best case scenario. So we do worst case scenario, which again, a lot of people give me crap for this, but my worst case scenario is not very likely. It's just as far down as I can stretch. All the close games that they won are going to be losses. And the same thing with best case scenario, except for all the close games are going to be wins. All right, so worst case scenario, I think obviously this stays the same. Carolina could win this one. They could lose to Dallas. And again, this is everything goes wrong. So this is a pretty big stretch. I didn't even talk about how I think Kirk Cousins is a bit underrated, but whatever. And then in Week 11, I could see them getting swept by Green Bay. I still can't see them not sweeping Detroit. Even doing worst case scenario, I just cannot see it happening. I can't see them getting swept by Chicago, though. That's probably the biggest stretch of this whole thing. It's either that Chicago sweeps them or that Dallas gets that win. But that is worst case scenario. And again, this isn't very likely. This is absolutely everything goes wrong. You need to rethink your whole organization here, because everything you thought was going right is going wrong. And now you end up being 3-14. But again, not very likely. Let's move all these back to what I think will happen. Again, what I think will happen, not what I think won't happen. And we're back. Now let's do best case scenario. Best case scenario, I think they're going to start 1-3 no matter what. I could see them beating the Chargers in best case scenario. They could easily sweep Chicago. You know what? I'm going to give them the win here against Arizona too. So that's about as far as I'm willing to stretch it. So there, come on, flip. Come on. There we go. I think that the farthest that I can stretch is 10-7, which is pretty good, and the farthest down I can go is 3-14. So they have a nice 7-game range there, and obviously I think that they will most likely go 7-10, which is around the middle, which is actually pretty rare. Normally a team has either a really their worst case scenario is 2 games below what I think they will go, and their best case scenario is 10 games above it or something. But no, the Vikings are right in the middle, so they've really got a lot of range. They could be one of the worst teams in the league, or they could make the playoffs looking pretty good and ready to win a couple playoff games, I would imagine. But anyway, 7-10 is where I think they will go. So I know at the beginning of the video I said I think they could be fighting for the playoffs, and I think that could be true. I think, going into Week 13, at 6-6, I think that they definitely could still be in the playoff race until maybe Week 15. It's just that I didn't notice how tough their schedule is. They have a pretty tough schedule. If they had a couple other games that weren't, a lot of their games are really close too, and that I gave them wins for. So this could get a lot worse. But also, if a couple of the games go in their favor, if a couple players have kind of off games, they could end up at 10-7. So. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you don't hate me too much, but if you do, go watch my Lions video, which is coming out tomorrow, because I don't know if you can see here, but they're not going to get a very good record. So if you don't like me, but you don't like the Lions either, go watch that video. Maybe you'll like me a bit better. Please like and subscribe, like I said at the beginning of the video. I hope to see you in my next one. I'll talk about the Lions and what I think their record will be. And until next time, goodbye.